So, all right. Any questions that we have so far?
No. Looks like
Yay.
well.
All right. So at the end of the session, Emily's going to post a link, and it will be for a feedback form. You do have to fill this form out today. So my recommendation, we're going to try to give you 5 to 7 minutes between this presentation and the next one. Take a minute. It won't take you but a second. Fill it out really quick, and it will send you to the link that you can get to print or save your certificate or your documentation for your district. And of course, the CEUs are up to your district. So this is who we are. I'm Janet Frazier. I'm the digital learning facilitator for the Inca district within Buncombe County Schools, which is beautiful Asheville, North Carolina. So we're out here in the mountains. And here's my email as well as my Twitter handle. Love for you to follow me on Twitter. Erin?
I'm Erin West, and I'm currently a 5th grade math and science teacher, also in Buncombe County at Inca Intermediate School. And my email address, erin.west@bcsemail.org, is also there. And love for you to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. I love using these in the classroom, so I'd love to help you out.
And I am Emily Green. I get the privilege to be these ladies' media coordinator in Buncombe County at Inca Intermediate as well. So they have created a wonderful resource to use. So we're excited that y'all are here today with us.
And we do want to give a shout out to Eric Kurtz, who works with the Stark Portage Area Computer Consortium. I have got a link to the site that offers video PD that is fantastic. And that's where I first started using these comics and where I got the inspiration from. So I wanted you to have a link to that resource. So as you're able later to open this this presentation, you'll have that link as well. All right, so very quickly, Emily is going to pop this comic poll into the chat. And so if you'll click on this link, it's going to take you into a quick Google poll, one question. And as we look at this one question, I want you to think about comics. You know, I grew up with comic strips, funny pages in the newspaper, all of that good stuff. And so you think about your students and how familiar they are with comics or with graphic novels, which is kind of how comics are making a comeback. So real quickly, fill that out, and we're going to look at the results. And if you're not familiar with Google Forms, this is a poll and a form, and you can see the responses coming in live time right now. We've got 28 already. And how many people are we at now? Can one of you ladies tell me, because I don't have that up?
I cannot see that either, Janet.
That's okay.
It says we have 70 participants.
Oh, good. We're almost to our number. All right. So when we reach 40, we're going to click on these responses and just see on a scale of 1 to 5, how familiar do you think your kids are with comics? All right, let's see. So we see, whoops, we see that few people think that they're pretty familiar with it. Most people say about a 3 or a 4. So yeah, I'm glad y'all think that your kids are pretty familiar with them. I'm assuming that that's more from the graphic novel type thoughts than from actual comics in the newspaper, because I don't see those anymore. But you know, even when students are able to create a comic, the way that we're going to show you today gives them an opportunity to do it with confidence and with some support that really is going to help students through that process, and can actually be done easily from home or at school. And so that's what we're going to look at today. So Emily?
Yes, so hi guys, and we are, as we said, from Buncombe County Schools, And in Buncombe County Schools, we implement this daily instructional framework. So we want to make sure we hit all of these gears to promote student learning. So basically, comics are going to hit most of these gears: the reading, the writing, the thinking, the speaking, the listening. It's actually very multifaceted as far as all the different strengths that they have to dive into to create these. They're really writing graphic novels and comic strips. It's really an involved process that uses several of these gears. So that's why we advocate using them in the classroom, especially in Buncombe County. And so today we're focusing on Google Slides. Google Slides lends itself wonderfully to making comics. You don't have to use any of these other resources. But if for some reason your county doesn't have access to Google Slides or doesn't use Google as a platform, there are other options for you. So I know we have lots of people here from across the state and in other states. So there are these tools, Powtoon, Make Believe Comics. Those are two places you can go to find resources to use comics in the classroom. And then Storyboard That is also an excellent resource. It is, however, limited because you do have to pay to get, and there's a free component and then a paid component. So Storyboard That is wonderful, but it is costs money somewhat. So today we are going to focus on Google Slides or PowerPoint, if you will. So you're going to get everything you need today if you have those two platforms, but if not, you still have options.
So when looking at comics in the classroom, when Janet and I first started exploring this idea, and Emily, it was kind of this fun way of getting thoughts out there where they could summarize without just writing paragraphs, or just a different way for the students to get their information out there. So that brought in the creative piece. I really enjoy seeing the things that they create, and sometimes you get products out of students that you wouldn't normally get with just writing a paragraph. So it's fun, it's engaging, and I see, like I said, overall more student participation when it's something fun like this comic where they're creating their own idea when you give them a focus point. And it gives the students a chance to display their learning in multiple areas and with multiple topics. And so I just like that flexibility of comics. And then higher order thinking skills, especially some of the time I limit the number of slides they have. And so they really have to synthesize that information and get it down to the super important main ideas. So there's a lot of synthesis and higher order thinking skills when the students are creating their comics. So I just really enjoy that in the classroom and seeing what they produce. And then Google Slides, I'll be honest, why Google Slides? Because it's easy. And I really liked that ease of being able to put it together with the kids, and also the shareability. They can easily share it with me, or if it's a group comic, because sometimes I'll have them in small groups, they can easily share it with just their group members. And for a lot of our students in Buncombe County, it's very familiar. They've grown up in the G Suite since they're in Buncombe County schools. So using Google Slides, using Google Forms. So a lot of the tools that are on there, they're already pretty familiar with. There's the comment feature that I, as the teacher, can just give them private feedback or group feedback. And something we'll be getting into with you today is the controlled environment. I really like the safety of it. When you put the template out there, you've already found the backgrounds and the characters and everything that they need, that they just want to pull and use. And so I like that controlled environment safety of my fifth graders not just having to go out on the internet and search for pictures and that kind of thing. And then two other options, and this has really helped me. So with the classroom, you can print it out. As you can see there to the right of the example, you can actually print it out where it looks like a comic strip on the page, and that's great for hallway display and that sort of thing. But then you can also publish it and post it to the web, and that's worked really well during this virtual school component, that we can just publish it and it's a nice, pretty finished piece of work, but it's digital. And so I've just really liked that you can do both of those with Google Slides. So now the fun stuff is where is you can use it anywhere. And that's another reason that I really, really like it. So in ELA, it's great for summarizing or plot or sequence. You can really use it with any reading ELA skill. In math. As you'll see my example here in a little while, I used it with my students on showing their strategies of thinking, and they had to use an array in division. In science, any type of cyclical pattern, weather or water cycle, any type of process, it works really well. Social studies, we talked about point of view from perspective of a war or just a social, battle or disagreement. You can present different sides of an argument. Art, Emily, do you want to speak to like some exploratories, being media coordinator, some places you've seen these used?
Yeah, you can definitely, anytime you are doing a series in a process or retelling a story, or you can, there's so many ways you can incorporate this. It doesn't have to be the traditional comic story entire thing. You can take pieces of this and add it into your lessons, that just as an engagement piece or to beef up what you're already doing in the classroom. So yes, as an exploratory, you can use these in all kinds of ways, in art, music, STEM.
And so if you all would be thinking about how your content might be able to be used with comics, and we'll be sharing a document closer to the end of our presentation where you can share your ideas, and there are already several on there. So that's going to be a great resource. If you all can go ahead and start mulling that over.
Yeah, already like 9 pages. So y'all are going to leave with lots of ideas today from lots of great brains all over the place. All right.
So this next slide, this is one of my students' works that they presented with math, solving a division problem, use the array, and I just wanted to have this example out there. And you can see how this particular student did like a little split screen, like a telephone conversation. Of course, one of his characters is using a banana phone. So this was really fun. And like I said, it's limitless what they can really do and how they can present their learning and thinking. They absolutely love it.
Okay, and so this is an example of a virtual attempt that we had. One of our precious teachers put this out there in the virtual classroom. She saw our presentation and she just threw this out there to her students as an extra activity, and this is what they came up with. And you can see it's we did a little bit for a little instruction that they had. They were able to add the characters, and they used the speech bubble and added a little bit of talk. So this is just a one slide example. So like Erin just said, you can create have them create an entire storyline, or you could have each kid create just one slide and then put all the slides together. It's really limitless with the possibilities, but just don't try not to get overwhelmed with trying to do the whole thing, because it does involve quite a bit of instruction and trial and error. You might even let the kids play with the functions of it, with dragging in text bubbles and dragging in the different people, and just playing around with it first, and then you can build on it from there. So we just wanted to show you a really basic example of what one looks like.
All right, and so talking about scaffolding, Erin mentioned earlier that she likes to have everything together so that her students don't have to go out into the internet to find all of the stuff that they're looking for. And so the idea that I had when Erin and I started this was to create a template. And so this template, when we open it, it's going to actually ask you, and it's going to ask me the same thing, do you want to create a copy? And so when you eventually are able to get into this, come on, okay. When you're actually able to get into this and click on this and make your own copy of this template, this is going to give you a template that you can go and run with, and you can take and edit this template. But I kind of wanted you to see what we did with the template. So we started with, obviously, the title of it, Create Your Own Comic Template. But then we explain to students who might not realize that each slide is one comic frame. So for those students who are less familiar with comics, it might be helpful to expose them to a comic first. You know, show them a graphic novel, let them understand that a box is a frame, and each slide on here then is going to be one comic frame. But then we explained that we have a bank for them of the characters and the props and the speech or thought bubbles, and then the teacher's going to give specific instructions as to how they're going to complete the project. So we've got a couple of quick example slides, and on this one, the little guy's way out on the boat. Of course, I shrunk him. Creating math cartoons can be really fun. Do you know what 6 divided by 2 is? And of course, this is really simple because I just wanted them to be able to see how you would use this as a frame. So in the next one, we simply resize the little fella and bring him off the boat and onto the land, and he's able then to talk about what he is working on. And so this is just a couple of frames to show them what a frame is and how they would go about resizing. And then we have specific instructions for them. So in just a minute, you're going to see we have backgrounds, and then we have banks. We have a character bank, a prop bank, and then a speech and thought bubble bank. And with those things, then this explains to them that they're going to decide which background or more than one background that they want. They can delete the rest of the backgrounds so that it's not distracting for them. And then they're able to replicate or duplicate the ones that they do want to use. And then with the banks, they will right click and copy and then paste it onto the slides that they want it on, and then they can click and resize. And so this just explains all of those details to students who may not be as familiar with using Google Slides. So here are the banks that we created to start with. We were doing it was kind of an open-ended question that we were doing with the class to start with. So we had a plethora of different characters, and I kind of matched the characters and the props to the backgrounds, which you'll see in just a minute. So there they are. And then we have speech and thought bubbles. And then of course we have the one that is the yelling bubble. And then here's the props. And of course you can see now how they kind of correlate to some of the characters. And then I'm going to just quickly scan through these backgrounds because we're going to go into how you find a background and how you get it into here in just a moment. So the first thing I would have students do then is to delete the backgrounds they don't want. And then they're going to have the one that they do, and then just their banks. And so you will also have access to this particular template. Please feel free to take it and delete what you don't want or add to it if there's something different that you do want, and use it as a basis for you to kind of springboard from. So finding backgrounds. If you were building your own template, which is what we're going to kind of start today, so you can see that process, is, well, before we do this, Emily, do we have any questions that we need to cover?
Nope, we're doing good.
Good deal, good deal. Okay, so we're going to start one today, and if you have not already, I'm going to have you in just a minute push escape, and then you're going to open a new Google slide deck. So what I do before I even go to the slide deck though is I go to one of these places that I am looking for my background. So here are some common ones that are easy to use: Pixabay, Creative Commons, Slides, Carnival backgrounds, and Google Images. And there are others. And so as a media coordinator background, right, Emily, I'm concerned about copyright and legality. And so one of the things I always try to do is make sure that whatever I'm using is either public domain or no attribution required, so that it's legal. And just let me put a plug in for this is a perfect place to teach students about digital citizenship and copyright and fair use and all of those types of things. So what I would do, and we're going to actually use Google Images today, put in a search word, whatever you're going to search for, mountain scene, beach, outer space, whatever it is that you're looking for. And if you want it to be cartoony, you can put cartoon mountain scene. And then I usually, if I'm looking for the background, will add the word background to it. And then I'm going to go to Tools, Usage Rights, and Labeled for Reuse with Modification. And I'm going to show you this. And then I'm going to save this image to my desktop. And I usually just save it to my desktop so that it's there and handy. So when I'm ready to pull it into my Google Slides, it's right there ready for me to go. And so we're going to actually work on this in just a moment in the slides that you're opening. So before we do that, I am going to go out of this, and I'm going to show you just basically how I do that. So I'm going to open a new tab, and I'm just going to go to Google and click on Images, however you typically get to Google Images. So let's do an outer space background. And after I search and I get all these up here, what I'm going to do is go to Tools right here on this, and this is all in that slideshow, but Tools, and then Usage Rights, and then Labeled for Reuse with Modification, or in this case, Labeled for Non-Commercial Reuse with Modification. And so this should pull background images that are going to be safe and legal for me to use. So I see one here that's Pixabay. I'm going to click on that one. I'm going to click on it again. All right, and so this one says Pixabay license, free for commercial use, no attribution required. So I really like that one because I know that it's going to be legal for me to use and I don't have to give any citation. And so then I could do this download. I'm going to download it. And I am going to save it to my desktop, and I'm just going to call it Outer Space so I can find it easily in just a moment. All right, so we now have our background saved. And so now when I go into my empty slideshow, I'm going to go to the first slide. I'm going to click on somewhere in the background. If I was in here, this option for background would not show. So I'm going to click outside the box. Background shows up. Choose image. And again, this is all in the slideshow. I'm going to find the image that I just saved and click open. Okay, so now I have that on this background. So if I were doing a template, I would open a new slide and do the same thing for my second slide. Or if this were the whole comic strip, I could click add to theme, and then it would become the background for all of my comics. So for students who may be going to use the same background for all of them, add to theme might be handy. If you're doing a template and you need several backgrounds, then you would just do this individually on each slide. So there we have our background. All right, so we are going to take, let me get back to this. We're going to take just a minute, and we're going to have you go to a Google Slides and also go into Google Images and see if you can find a background that's legal for you to use and see if you can save that in there. So we're going to take about 3 minutes to do this, and we'll be quiet while you do that. I'm going to leave this up so you'll have the instructions. Where is it? There it is. And if you have a question, feel free to pop it in the chat, or if it's something you think everybody's going to need to know, you can unmute yourself to ask out loud. So 3 minutes, go ahead and go and do that, and we'll come back.
And guys, I'm going to pop the link to the Create Your Own Template into the chat box, right? Right, Janet?
That sounds great.
I apologize. My Google decided to close, but I'm getting it right now, ladies and gentlemen. Apologize.
That's fine. No hurry for that because they're making their own, so no worries.
Oh, okay, good. So there is a copy in the chat of a Create Your Own comic. And there are a couple of questions while we're looking, while you guys are doing this. First off, Joyce is asking, she missed the filtering for the digital rights. Is that is labeled right here on the finding background slide, Joyce? So if you have your own copy of the presentation slides from that bit.ly, you can have this slide to reference back to on how to do that, how to change the rights for the images. And go ahead, Janet.
Oh, but just basically, if you're looking right now, Joyce, if you have done your Google search, then when your images come up, go to Tools, and under Tools, choose Usage Rights, and then labeled for reuse with modification or labeled for non-commercial reuse with modification.
Okay, she's got it. Awesome.
Good.
So Estella asks, why do you have to save to the video instead of just copying and pasting?
Save to the desktop, is that what she's asking?
Instead of just copying and pasting, why are you choosing to save it? She meant picture, by the way. Yes.
No, that's fine. You might be able to do that, but I just find when I'm pulling it into the background, because if I paste it on the slide as a picture, the students are going to be able to move it, and I want it to be still. So that's why I always save it and pull it in as a background instead of just pasting the picture on the slide.
Yeah, that was a great question. Thanks.
Yes, very good.
Okay, then we have another one from Dawn. She says, will students be able to incorporate their own hand-drawn images into a comic? If so, will you be going over how that's done?
Wow, that is actually not something we're going to cover, but basically, if your student, I don't know if we're talking about backgrounds or if we're talking about images to go on top of the backgrounds, but if they are drawing a picture that's going to be a background, it could either be scanned or take a photo of it, and then you would have that image and you could pull that in as the background, just like we did these pictures. If it's a picture that's going on top, that's a little trickier because you would have to actually snip that picture out by tracing the outer lines of it. But it is a possibility, and if a student is that excited and motivated, then they might be willing to do that.
And I think, and what Janet's referring to is the ping images. And just a minute, I think we're going to go to that in just a minute, right, Janet?
Yes,
Sorry,
ma'am.
move
Yes,
ahead. But that's what she's going to go over. The images that go on top of the slides need to not have their own backgrounds. That way they look like the images you see on the screen right now. They're just free floating, basically. They don't
Yes.
have anything in the back, any color or anything in the back. So you have to search specifically for those, which is not hard to do. You just need to know the difference.
Yep. All right. So if you'll come back in, we're going to move back into our slideshow and go on to our next slide and talk about these characters and props and speech bubbles. And does anybody have any particular issue that we need to troubleshoot, or any questions or any comments about finding that background? Is it quiet, Emily?
We just had a great resource plugged in the chat from somebody that said to remove the backgrounds on an image, you can use removebg.com for free. So
Yes.
that's an option.
That is an excellent resource. Thank you for sharing that.
We'll snag that and put it in our toolbox.
Yes, we'll put it in the resource on the resource page.
Yeah. And then
right.
Miss Canvas says that students could upload the drawing into Google Draw and then use tools there to crop their own photos. So thank you for that. Google Draw.
Yes, another good idea. See, that's why we love all these wonderful brains together.
Yes, thank you, ladies. That's awesome.
Yes. So finding characters, props, and speech bubbles. Again, there are several different places that you can go to get these things. Pixabay, public domain pictures, Google Images, and then of course within Google Slides, you have insert image and search the web. And so if you were searching in Google Images, I would use the same process, tools, usage rights, labeled for reuse. and I would again look for public domain and no attribution required. I did do a little research, and my understanding is that if you're using the images that are within your Google tools, in Google Slides, the insert image, search the web, those should be legal for you to use. And I did put a resource that documents that at the end of the slideshow, so you'll see that. PNGs do not have a background. A lot of times what you may see if you pull up a PNG is a little gray and white dotted background, and or checkerboard, not dotted, but checkerboard background. And all that is saying is that basically when you copy that in, everywhere that gray and white is you're going to see whatever background you have in there. So if, in other words, if I had a blue background on here, we would see blue all around my snowman. So that just helps sometimes with the search. I'll put PNG in there. And having these characters and props and speech bubbles is great for scaffolding, for a controlled environment. The younger the students, the less characters, props, and speech bubbles I would probably have. The older the students, the more I might let them go out and search for their own with the instructions on how to search, but especially with the Google Slides, insert image and search the web. So
They just have those in there.
I'm going to go out and I'm going to go back to our presentation where we were looking at our outer space background, and I'm going to click on this box and delete that. I'm going to delete this guy. And I'm going to do insert image, search the web. And I'm going to put cartoon spaceship. All right, and so when I put cartoon spaceship, I get several options, and when I click on it, I can click insert, and it usually pops them up pretty big. So here we go. I have now got an image that I can edit the size. I can flip it if I needed it go in the opposite direction, but also if this was my background and this was a template, I could do slide, new slide, and I could put this little joker on this slide to make the props or the item bank. And so I actually take it off this slide and then let students decide where they wanted it. So my item bank is just a slide where I've inserted either the characters or the props or the speech bubbles that I want. So what we want to do now is we want to take just a minute, since you have got that Google slide presentation open. You've already found a background. We went ahead and did that and kind of got that out of the way. Now we're going to add either an additional slide for characters or props or speech bubbles, or if you want to add them to the background that you already did, just so that you can get a feel for building that comic strip, you can do either one of those right now. So we're going to take, again, about 5 minutes to give you some time to be able to start building something that you can use with your kids, or just to kind of try some of this out, and while we're here and able to ask or answer questions for you or help you troubleshoot. So I have got 9:22. We're going to take 5 minutes and come back together at 9:27. Again, you can click escape and go to your Google Slides and have about 5 minutes to work. And if you have a question, you're free to pop that into the chat, or if you want to unmute, if you think it's something that other people might need to know as well, just unmute and ask it out loud so that we can help you with that. And Emily, feel free to pop in if somebody puts a question in.
Oh.
All right, we've got about 1 more minute and then we'll come back together. Catherine asked about how you find out if an image has a background or not, and just for Erin posted the technical part of it is the PNG at the end of it, but sometimes I just kind of do it by trial and error too. I'll just tell you that. If I see an image I like, I click on it and pop it in, and if it has a white back box around it, then I'll know it wasn't a PNG. But if it has that PNG extension, if you see that, then you know that it's one that doesn't have the background. And it's time for us to come back together. So if you have got something that you would like to ask or share about being able to find the characters and the props and the speech bubbles, either pop that in the chat or tell us out loud so that we can troubleshoot or celebrate something good that you were able to find.
Lucy and Estella are saying, Lucy says if you add PNG after your word in your search, that'll help. And then Estella says in Google Slides, you can add icon at the end of your search and it should help.
Yes.
And Amy says you can also search transparent background. That will help. And if you put transparent before your search, for example, transparent apple, transparent popcorn.
Great. Lots of great ideas. Thank you all. Other ideas or anything we need to troubleshoot?
And I will say, you know, finding all your props is a little time consuming in the beginning, but once you get them, that's, I mean, you've got them and
Right.
It's not as bad. So take a break, come back to it.
Yeah. Katie, thanks for that link also. Again, this is why I like to have lots of great minds together.
And with this particular one, there was such a variety that also takes a little more time. Sometimes if you already have a theme in mind, like one of our ELA classrooms with the baseball theme, it's a lot easier because you have a specific focus. This one had all different varieties of things. So that'll also take a little longer.
Right. Or if you were doing a particular ecosystem or, you know, something like that, that would make it simpler as well. So sharing it to your students. Erin, were you going to do this one?
It has your name on it, but I don't mind.
Okay. I was thinking we had said you were doing it, but anyway.
So students absolutely love seeing their work. And that's something else that I really, really enjoy is they like seeing the process. So there are several ways that you can share it directly to your students. So Google Classroom is one of the easiest ways with this virtual time that we're in that I've found to share it. So you make your template, then you go to the create, the little plus create in your classwork tab in Google Classroom, and you create an assignment, and then you make a copy for each student, and you can just put this template right in there, and it'll force them to make a copy so they're not working on your main template. And then if you need to link it elsewhere, somewhere other than Google Classroom platform, there's a shareable link that it will give you. And you can see an example of it at the bottom of this slide. So you would copy that link, and then you see the word edit highlighted in yellow there. What you can do is you can take that word edit and change it to copy. And when the students or whoever you're sharing it with clicks on the link, it will force them to make a copy so they're not working on your main original document. So make sure that you change that word edit to copy, so that'll force them to make a copy. And those are some of the easiest ways to share it to your students, so that they can work in the templates you've created.
And that's actually what I did with the template that we shared with y'all, is I took the link and replaced edit with copy. So that's what makes that so nice.
And then there are some additions that you can add to your comics that make them more similar to like a video. And we'll be talking about this in part 2, advanced comics, tomorrow. But just some things that you can add with your students are animations, so that you actually can make the character move on the slide. Transitions are going from one slide or one frame to the other, so like fade, that type of thing. Rubrics are a way that I've found are a really good way to assess and grade their comics, because you can grade on so many different levels, and then be how you publish it to the web for a finished product. And again, we'll cover all these in part 2 tomorrow, and it's called Advanced Comics. If you're interested in joining us, we'd love to have you. So in the classroom, virtual versus face-to-face, I know for me, and I'm sure a lot of teachers, this was a huge shift. I'm used to using a lot of technology in my classroom, but this was still just a completely different environment. So virtual, some things that, pros and cons that I found to these comics virtually at home, or the individual computer issues. I couldn't go right to the student and kind of troubleshoot with them right there. So it's a little more tricky. My response time to the students were longer. They're kind of this instant gratification, needing their answer right there, and virtually, I couldn't always get to them. But they did seem to be more engaged. It gave them kind of a longer focus, something that they could work on and be more creative with independently. So that was a good thing virtually. And then also this really lends itself well to creative writing in the virtual world, because they're at home by themselves. They don't have their teacher right there, you know, kind of sparking that creative writing interest. So comics were a good way to do that. But then face-to-face, it is easier and will be easier to troubleshoot those individual computer issues. You can go right to that child, and that gives for a more immediate response. Collaboration is a lot easier face-to-face in the classroom, setting up those groups. So just that collaboration, social piece. And then it lends itself well to peer tutoring, collaboration, and that also with my rubrics, I set it up where they can self-assess and peer assess on the rubric itself. So sometimes that grading and just interacting with their peers, you know, is a good pro to being in the classroom. So some other just ideas in the virtual versus face-to-face world, that experienced users, the more they use it, they will become a lot more adept at the project. And of course, their experience with Google Slides just creates a comfort there to make this easier for your students and for you, the teacher, to be able to help and share with your students. Something I really like is that being able to release control as they're more comfortable and they can be a little more independent with it. Managing expectations, I think, is very, very important, especially if you haven't been able to introduce this in the classroom yet or before going virtual. We have to make sure that we're keeping the expectations very, very clear, because as you saw, this is so open. There are so many possibilities with this that just to put it out there and say, create a comic, that's just way too much for the students and also for me as the teacher to kind of handle, because I have no idea what to expect. So as Emily mentioned earlier, maybe setting it up that one of your days is practicing creating a background, just like we did with you all today, or practicing getting those props or how to copy and paste from a template. And so just basically, you know, playing around, getting familiar with it the same way I would do kind of math manipulatives. You know, you give them some build time before you say, okay, now we need to use our Unifix cubes for this. So it's kind of the same way with these comics. Give them some play time to manage those expectations, and then you can focus on technique and grammar and the flow of their comic. Something I've really noticed in the virtual world as the classroom teacher is this whole professional language versus peer talk. And even though we have some very tech-savvy kids, they aren't necessarily professional tech-savvy kids. And so some of that professional language is something that I've just kind of noticed, is that viewing their computer as not just a gaming tool, but their professional working tool. And so emphasizing in their comics that it is professional learning. Yes, it's fun. Yes, it's engaging. Yes, it's creative. And that can also get into voice of your character. So I just think that's really interesting. And then the getting to know comics, suggestions, step by step. So those were just some more notes on the virtual versus face-to-face, just, you know, some things that virtually you don't really have control of that in the classroom you would. So you all have any questions, thoughts, anything you want to put out there about comics in the classroom?
Just real quick, I will address one of the questions that came up in the chat. It was how to share it to Class Dojo as a video. That would be part of the publishing to the web that we mentioned earlier. And we'll be talking more in depth about that tomorrow at the advanced one. But if you know how to go to File, Publish to the Web, it will give you a link. And I'm not familiar, I know about Dojo, but I've never used Dojo. So if you just need a link to post, then that would give you a link that you could post. So I hope that that answers your question.
And it will also give you an embed link if you need to embed it into something.
No, you're not automatically enrolled tomorrow. I know we had some rooms still this morning. So just look for it. You can look for it under one of our names to find it if you're interested in doing the second one. And we are about out of time. Emily, you want to give them a link for this document?
I just did. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So everybody, the link I just put, go ahead, Janet. Sorry.
No, I was just going to go ahead and talk while you were putting it in, but you've already got it in, so go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I apologize. I just saw my name. Sorry, girl.
You're fine.
So yeah, everybody, we just uploaded a link. So I know somebody has already mentioned they had an idea they wanted to share with the group. This link is one that we've used in all of our past presentations. So there is already a ton of great ideas that have been shared there. So please feel free to use this link to a shared doc where you can add your ideas, or you can just totally peruse all the other ideas that have been added. But definitely check out this doc because there's some good stuff there.
And when you have this presentation, you'll have a link to this doc later. So if you come up with another idea later, please add it, or feel free to go back in and steal other people's ideas then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah. Thanks, Janet.
No problem. So we do have resources here, and this is a lot of what we've used. We just wanted you to be able to have all of these different resources.
So the feedback link has just been posted. It is also a bit.ly.
And we thank y'all for being with us today.
Yes, thank you so much.
We're excited to get to chat with y'all and share with you.
And great job for sticking in there. Right there with
and we'll
you.
hang
Thank
out
you.
for a couple of minutes if anybody has any questions. But if you need to scoot off to get to another one, you feel free to do so. Just make sure you get that bit.ly so you can get in and do that evaluation to get your CEUs.
And I see that Catherine says that her background, she's going to be using it tomorrow on erosion. So
Cool.
something I was going to bring up, that it's usable 5 minutes from now. You know, you can go ahead and
Yes.
incorporate it. So yes, please use it.
You guys have been a good crowd. Thank you.
Thank you.